Hello and welcome back to Star Citizen, where patch 3.7 has hit the servers recently, and I figured in order to celebrate the new rental system that makes it easier to you than ever to try out the different ships in Star Citizen without investing any money or ridiculous amounts of time, I'd start a small series on basically going through a bunch of the basic ships in Star Citizen and telling you a few things about them, which in this episode we're going to start with the Anvil Hornets, or Anvil Hornet F7c, Hornet, whatever base Hornet. It has quite a few names, which is, I think, a good ship to start with, not because it's available in the rental system. I'm not sure if it is. I think it actually isn't. However, it's one of the most iconic Star Citizen ships, and I have pretty much never talked about it in all of my episodes up until now, so I figure it's time to change that a bit. Anyway, the Hornet F7c, as I said, is probably one of the first ships that we got to see in the original Kickstarter campaign trailer. It has gone through quite a few changes since then, but it still is supposed to be the civilian version of the military dogfighter. So it's a space superiority fighter, and if you're looking to kill stuff, it should be a decent option, at least, right? So let's now go through if the Hornet actually holds up to that particular promise. Because if you're like me and you got access to a Hornet at some point in your game time, you probably, because your first impression of that probably was something closer to, really? That's the Hornet? I'm not very impressed with it. Anyway, so first, a small heads up, there's multiple variants of the Hornet. The one you're seeing here, you know, that thing here. Whoa, lag. Slow down, lag. The one you see here is the base variant of the Hornet, but there's also the slightly more expensive Tracker and Ghost variants of the Hornet, who are basically identical except for paint job and what kind of equipment they start out on. Then there's also the even more expensive Heartseeker variant, which also same things apply, but it's significantly more powerful in the beginning. And the Super Hornet variant, which is slightly more expensive than the Heartseeker and also has some special equipment that I'll talk about later in this video. But for now, let me first try and find a job so we have something happening on the screen while I talk about stuff. That sounds good. Where is it though? Alright, over there. Any jump point closer? It's closer, but need to clear Atmo first. Anyway, when you get a Hornet, no matter how, I actually got my Hornet because it's the Arena Commander loaner for my Constellation, because I can't use my Constellation in Arena Commander, so I get a Hornet in order to use there, but because of reasons you can also use it in the Persistent Universe for the time being, so I kind of got that through that kind of niche. But I never used it much because the few times that I did try and use it, I always felt very underwhelmed. And the main reason for that is that the base equipment that you get with the ship is extremely bad. The ship basically starts out with 2 size 3 guns under the wings. You know, let's take a little look at it. Here's wings. There's some guns under it. And the ship basically starts only with 2 weapons strapped under the wings. It's size 3 weapons, which is a bit, but really not enough to seriously kill anything, and currently fixed weapons also have some issues that I don't really want to go in, which makes it difficult to use against fighter craft, if not impossible, because it tries to correct for some stuff that might not even be there. So not a very good choice for that. So I always just used it in order to get from place A to place B while my other ships were down, which I always felt like was doing a disservice to one of humankind's best space superiority fighters. But that's what I basically thought it was. Up until recently, where some people were discussing that in order to get anything out of the ship, you need to upgrade it. So let's start with what we got and start with upgrading. As you probably noticed, right now the ship doesn't only have weapons under the wing over here, but also on the nose. That's probably the first thing that you'll see as an upgrade path if you take a look at the base variant, because the base variant just has nothing there. Which, okay, no problem. Just go to my trusty weapons dealer, buy a gun, strap it on there, and then all my problems will be fixed. Sadly, no, because again, you probably strap on a fixed weapon so that so that you have similar properties to the guns under your wings already, and fixed weapons just really don't do it. Let's say you added a laser repeater there. The laser repeater in and by itself won't really do much if your other guns have run out of ammo. So up at that point, you'll just be using some missiles which may have already run out of ammo sooner, and a single size 3 laser is not really impressing anybody. So what to do next? Well, what you probably want to do next is that big thing there on the back in the center of a ship. The base variant in the center of a ship starts with a so-called store all box, which is basically a small transport box that allows you to store 2 SEUs of commodities, which on paper seems like a good thing. You have a fighter craft that can also store some things in its small, I don't know, backpack or whatever you want to call it. However, the problem is that with 2 SEUs, you're not really any kind of serious trader, and you can't do delivery missions on top of some small trading because you can't fit your delivery boxes in it because you have no way of accessing it. You can load commodities in there automatically, but you can't drop your delivery boxes in there, and the cockpit surely doesn't have space to put delivery boxes in unless you use some exploits, or just basically throw it in with the cockpit open is what the exploit is, in case you're wondering. So, oops, I wanted to push it on. Also need some guns. So, in my humble opinion, as someone who's not normally using a Hornet, the store all box is kind of wasted space in my book. However, there are other options, namely 2. The one you're seeing here is what's called a flash fire mount, which has recently been available to be bought in the Persistent Universe again. So you can just go to a few shops like Levski, where we started this video out on, for instance, sells those things. And once you have those, you can just replace the box with it, and then you can mount a size 4 gun on it. Now you might be wondering, what does an additional size 4 gun do that we didn't already try to solve with a size 3 gun earlier? The answer is actually quite a bit, because the size 4 guns are pretty different from the size 3 guns. They're not that much better in terms of DPS, but most of them have much higher range than size 2 and size 1 guns have, and size 3. So what you can do is what you saw me earlier with this enemy over here. I already started sniping at it at like a distance of 4K, where with this Andromeda it doesn't really matter that much, but with small fighter craft it does matter quite a bit, because at that distance they seem to be following kind of the idea of, well, my guns can't reach you, so you can't reach me, right? No, my gun actually can reach you. So they're not doing much evasive action at that stage, which you can use to soften them up. And I've also seen a lot of cases where that single size 4 gun was just able to completely destroy some of the smaller fighter craft that you'll see a lot in combat missions. So that single size 4 gun actually does a lot more than the size 3 gun earlier. However, you're still running around with a problem that you're using fixed weapons, and also another problem at this stage starts to reappear, which is the components that the ship has are pretty pathetic, to be honest. To give you a small recap, as most ships, it has a power generator, size 1 power generator. Most importantly, probably here, is that it has 2 size 1 shield generators, which helps a bit because you have more shield than other small fighter craft, like the Arrow, for instance, or let's say the 300 series kind of ships. So at least you got that going for it, but the generators used there are pretty bad, and recently the game introduced a very diverse set of generators that, if you are willing to spend some in-game money on it, can actually significantly improve your ship's capabilities. So, but the real issue at this stage is the power plant, because the power plant is also really, and I mean really, horribly bad. So you probably need to replace it there, because there's no way that your base power plant can provide enough energy for the guns you had on there before, your systems, and now also this new size 4 gun. Especially when you're in a combat situation and it needs to also divert some energy to the shields. Just to give you some rough idea that the shields draw quite a lot of power. I'm gonna actually shut off the shields for a second so that they have to regenerate. You can watch the power curve in the upper right or lower left screens. So I'm gonna switch off the shield for a second, and now back on. And you can see while they're charging and while they're not just sitting at 100%, they take up quite a lot of additional energy. Like, the shield is not even charging at 100% already, but it's still taking much more than it was when it was just basically idling. So that's a problem, performance of the ship under serious combat conditions, where the least thing that you want to worry about is not having enough power to power your critical systems. So there's that. So you probably want to replace the power plant. The coolers are decent, but admittedly, the most coolers are pretty much the same, with some very few exceptions. So, and they're also the most expensive thing to replace. So you probably want to put that off until the very last, as your very last action. Even I haven't been replacing both coolers yet, just one of the two, because they're really bloody expensive. But if you also increase the components of the ship and all of that, all of a sudden you have a pretty decent ship. And especially, as you could see, I currently have issues with Star Citizen and the mouse, so that I need to solve by mouse smoothing, which I really do not like at all. However, it's the only way that I can navigate in the menus at all, because otherwise it's just going crazy. So I basically need to use gimbal weapons for the automated fire mode, which does a pretty decent job. You may think it's cheap, but currently the precision just isn't there because of the mouse smoothing issues. So there's that, which brings me to the point that you probably want at this stage to be asking yourself, don't I just want to have gimbal guns on that ship? I mean, fixed is nice and all against big targets. You're just ripping them to shreds at this point. Constellations, no problem. Cutlasses, you just have to look at for a few seconds, and you'll just get shot to pieces. The NPCs ones, because they have much worse shields than the real Cutlass does. So those are not going to be a problem. Valkyrie is also not going to be a problem. Caterpillars are a different kind of beast. Maybe you still have enough firepower there, but you rarely run into those during your missions. So you'll probably want to increase your performance against the maneuverable targets for some of the ECM missions and some of the combat beacons that the game generates, which has a lot more diverse ships than the bounty missions do. So you'll probably want to go gimbal, which is fine. You're gonna lose out on a bit of firepower by downgrading your frontal 3 guns to size 2 instead of 3. But the result is pretty intimidating still, especially since that gun that is mounted on the flash mount does somehow count as a gimbal weapon, because it has no issue running in a gimbal setup. I'm not sure if that's as CIG if that is as CIG wants it to behave, but it's the behavior right now. It can act as a gimbal weapon if the rest of your weapons are gimbal weapons, which works fine for me. It might change in the future, but I would still be okay just having it as an additional fixed weapon that I can add as an additional firepower for when I'm engaging big targets. No, there's no spawn. Ooh, game, what are you doing? No spawn? Well, it happens sometimes that the mission forgets to spawn opponents. We have combat assistant speaking, but it's pretty far away. Ugh. I guess we're gonna do a combat assistance beacon that is pretty far away. Apologize. It's gonna take us a few minutes to just get there, which is kind of a lull in the whole thing. Maybe I'll cut it out, but knowing myself, I probably won't. But you can probably just skip ahead a few minutes, unless you're willing to listen to me talking, which you might, I don't know. But showing the combat assistance beacon is probably interesting because there's a lot more diverse set of opponents at those beacons than it is during the bounty missions. Bounty missions at this pay grade basically give you either a Constellation or a Valkyrie as your target, and then the other ship will probably be the other one of the two, or a couple of Buccaneers. But the beacons are way more interesting, and I've seen a lot of ships there, and I'm kind of wondering, you know, there's so many interesting ships, and they do seem to behave pretty well in combat. Why do I never see them at the normal patrol missions, where I only basically see exclusively Buccaneers, which is the most annoying kind of enemy that you probably want to see. It's a bit of a weird choice, CIG, I gotta say. It's a bit of a weird choice. Also, what I don't like is that social is always there. I normally switch that to shields. Then I switch that to weapons, and then I can have social here. Alright. I'm not sure if I mentioned this during our last episodes, but as you can see here, I have installed one of the best coolers that is currently in the game for size 1. Still my quantum drive. Where is the quantum drive? Where the hell is the quantum drive? Oh, there. The Foxfire here. It's still slowly overheating. Not sure if we'll be able to get the rest of the 18 million kilometer without it overheating, so I'm just gonna reduce the power it gets, at which point it should stop overheating. Yeah, it's not going any higher anymore. Might even decrease in heat at some point, but anyway, just a small little trick to make quantum travel slightly less annoying, which admittedly quantum travel right now is pretty annoying because there's lots of interceptions that we'll probably see along the way. Basically, there's 3 types of quantum interceptions that can happen automatically now. The game can just drop you off with an asteroid in the way, which I'm really like, what the fuck? What's the point of this? Just, you know, there's an asteroid in the way. Yeah, great. So I just need to move and then engage it again. Why? What's the point behind this? Is there maybe something missing? Was it supposed to spawn something else and failed? I don't know. But that's what I've seen quite a few times. Then other times there might be combat encounters where there might be... I've seen just a cutlass. Sometimes also, for whatever reason, caterpillars, sometimes more than one, which is kind of weird. Why would caterpillars try to hunt me down their trade ships? I mean, I can't kill them because they have 2 powerful shields, but seriously, why do caterpillars try to drop me out of quantum drive without any further support? That's kind of nonsensical too. And then the only interesting interdiction that you sometimes see is where an NPC ship that's not hostile to you is in the process of being attacked by pirates, which you can then help them out and take care of the pirates. If you do that, you also get a small payment at times. I think it's 250, which is a parking fine. It's worth of credits, which is not much, but it's something at least, for the hassle and being dropped out and all that. But generally, a lot of people right now kind of feel that the interdictions are a little bit too frequent. There are some kind of exploitative ways around that. If you have a multi-crew ship, apparently if you're just not sitting in your pilot seat, you'll be able to avoid interdictions, but we don't really have the space to leave this beautiful ship, So, not really an option for us at this stage. But still, I find it a little bit ridiculous how big this gun here in the Flashfire mount is. But it's fun. Anyway, since I started talking about the flashfire mount again, let's quickly talk about the Super Hornet, which is a very different Hornet variant than the rest of them is. The Heartseeker, before we go to Super Hornet, already starts in a pretty similar state to what this final state that I currently run here is, which already has a flashfire mount installed, lots of laser guns instead of the ammo-based Gatling guns. So it's much closer to what you would consider to be your, or at least I would consider to be the final state of the ship. The Super Hornet is a little bit different. One reason is that instead of a flashfire mount, it has a so-called ball turret there. I said ball. Yeah, right. Get over it. The ball turret, instead of having a single size 4 gun, has space for 2 size 2 guns, and I think they've also stated it somewhere that it's supposed to be gimbaled, which for the flashfire, as I mentioned earlier, is kind of, it's probably not supposed to be, but it behaves like that in some situations. Also, it's much easier to pair size 2 weapons with other size 2 weapons which you have everywhere, because with the gimbal mount, what's under the wing is size 2, what's under the nose is size 2, what's under the other wing is also size 2. Only the big gun on top is size 4, which kind of creates problems because the most effective size 4 guns have vastly different speeds than all size 2 guns, so there's really nothing you can properly match it with. Well, but if your turret is only 2 size 2 guns, it's fine. However, the Super Hornet has the additional problem that it doesn't come with an improved power plant in the stock configuration, so it has a huge issue of not having enough power in combat right from the start, and you probably want to fix that immediately before you see any real combat with it. But after that, it's probably a pretty decent ship. Another small difference that it has compared to this, instead of the one gun that's mounted on the nose, it has a special mount for the nose where it can mount 2 size 1 guns instead of the single size 2 gimbal one. Instead of the single size 2 gimbal gun that I have mounted here. 2 size 1 guns are slightly more effective than size 2 guns, and size 1 and size 2 guns do behave similarly in terms of their ammo speed and the rest of their behavior. So that's not so there's not a huge problem to mix and match and find a configuration that works well together. The configuration that I'm using here, as you've seen in the past fight, is basically I have one weapon group, which I just did because it always resets weapon groups anyway, so it's not really worth to always reset it manually, which has the big gun on the back, which has a much higher range than the rest of them have. It's in the same weapon group as the Gatling gun under the nose. However, the Gatling gun under the nose needs to spool up before it starts firing. So if you just gently tap the fire button for this weapon group, it will only fire the laser because the Gatling spools up, but then you're not pressing the button anymore, so it just doesn't fire at all. Which can be used to just poke targets at extreme ranges. And then when you're getting closer, I think the Gatling gun has a kind of range of 2,200 or something. Then you can start adding the Gatling gun fire if you think that you're still on target. And when you get even closer, I think the laser repeaters have a range of like 1,900, 1,800 or something. Then you can also add that for full firepower, and it's doing a pretty good job at killing at killing ships. I've been in some missions where I basically wasn't getting paid for the mission because the mission didn't update the stages fast enough for me to kill that target over there. It was basically dead before the mission realized that it was the target I'm looking for, and that I should please kill it. So it's doing a pretty good job. Let's see if I can also make it work at the quantum beacon here. Quantum beacons or combat assist beacons are interesting missions because lots of things can go wrong very quickly. So let's see what's happening here. But I should probably bring the weapons online too. What do we have? Starfarer. Okay, that's good because it's probably not gonna die very quickly. In some of these missions, there can be Auroras, and if just one of them dies, it's just over. Come on, just die already, mate. That's still alive, that thing, but it's red. All right. Oh, another Hornet. Oops, that was another Hornet. What the hell? Could you go a little bit away from the Starfarer? I don't want to shoot at it. No? Okay, thank you. It's very nice of you. I can shoot you down much easier if you're not directly next to the target I'm trying to protect. One. 325s are pretty maneuverable. And I have shield-piercing weapons that I don't particularly like. And we got more enemies. Not a big fan of that, but the Starfarer is gonna survive it for a few seconds. Whoops. Another Hornet. Well, from the NPCs, you might get the opinion that the Hornet is much worse than the 325. I think just the armor values of the Hornet are not set up properly, and they don't have the improved shields that I bought. So once the shields are down, they're just immediately killed. But it's not the case for the 325 because it was just recently improved and all that, remade, and it has proper armor values and stuff. So, Saber. Let's also try to use a missile. Just for the quota. Where the hell are you? Well, there you go. Another Saber. Whoa! Alright then. Bucks! Well, if we don't evade, you're just gonna die pretty quickly. Yeah. Alright. Could you... God damn it. There's a bug currently, which means that... which is basically that countermeasures are not really working like they should, so it's pretty much pointless to try and use them. Would have needed to react much quicker and try to accelerate, but kind of saw that warning a little bit too late. Alright. Was that all? No. Another Whoa, what the fucking shite. Well, you should get a move on, you know? Damn it. Come on, man. I know you're in a bloody buccaneer, but this is a bit ridiculous. I got something on my ass, I think. Another buccaneer, of course. Come on. Well, still shield there, but apparently it's still hitting armor somehow. But I mean, it has ballistic guns. It's possible. Let's use another missile on that guy. Alright. So was that all now? That was alright. It was more than enough. I mean, I also got paid small small increments of money just for killing those guys. So is there more? Please no. That was enough excitement for one mission. I think the mission bugged out. I've seen it sometimes happen when the last enemies are getting killed too far away from that vessel. Apparently, however far away the Buck and I were, was a bit too far away for the mission to still register it as the final target going down. I mean, the guy did say that nice, and that he kind of acknowledged that something was happening, but seems the mission bugged out. Doesn't really matter. We had our fun. We saw lots of ships getting killed, and also got a little bit of money out of the mission, at least, for killing all those ships on an individual level. I would have still taken the payout, but anyway, I'm gonna wrap up this episode here. I hope you liked the format, just discussing a single ship and how it works currently. In the next episode, we'll probably continue a similar discussion, but for the Avenger, which you can currently rent in-game with just in-game bucks, and it's pretty cheap. And I've often recommended it as a ship for people who are looking to upgrade their Aurora pledge or just looking for a decent all-rounder. So we'll take a look at that in the next episode. So I hope I see you next time. Have a good one.